Welcome to the future. I mean, 2010, hey? That's nuts. It just seems nuts to me, I don't know. I can honestly say that, it doesn't seem that long ago that I remember the old, odometer of time rolling over to, year 2000 there. I remember it very clearly, and, now here we are, and still no flying cars. What's up with that? Anyway, yeah, it's been a little while, sorry. Actually, you might think it was because, you know, the Christmas holidays and all that, and I guess it was, except that originally I didn't have any plans to, you know, take a break or anything like that. It was just, the holidays were a little bit different for me this year. There were some, extenuating circumstances, and it really, it's not that I wasn't tremendously busy, but, anyway, circumstances basically kept me from really getting an opportunity to do an episode unless, you know, I wanted to rush one or something like that. So anyway, today's, I don't know, I've already wasted a minute. I don't know if we'll get through it or not. It's a lot to cover. I thought I'd do something I got as a Christmas gift. This is a Marvel 70th Anniversary Collection. Marvel, of course, starting in 1939, so 2009 marking the 70th Anniversary Collection. And it's a compilation with several landmark, somewhat anyway, Marvel comics, and going decade by decade, put together by John Rhett Thomas, who worked with the Marvel Masterworks collections, and he runs the website there, and he's edited various things. And anyway, so there's a bit of an introduction, and then then they have their selections per decade, and then besides the ones they selected, they also have honorable mentions, the ones that didn't make it. And I'll just say right now, starting in the 40s, what kind of bothers me about this collection is that it's almost like he decided to not go for the obvious ones, and often when you're checking out the honorable mentions, you're like, that would have been better, why not include that? And that's how I felt throughout this. Okay, so we'll start, at least it starts at a very predictable place, Marvel Comics #1, that would be October 1939. And there's various stories in it, because back then it wasn't just one thing. And we'll start with the very first appearance of the Submariner, one of Marvel's first ever characters. And one thing I'll say is, you know, we look back on like times like the 40s in comics, and you know, and everything was a lot simpler. You know, the writing was clunky and predictable, and you know, and it's easy now, generations later, to just say how simple it was and how it wasn't really any good and blah blah blah. But I will say one thing. In his first ever appearance, I love how Submariner is drawn. I hope you can get a good shot of this. There's glare on the page as usual, but can you see him there in the panels? I don't know if in all the decades he's been around, he's ever been drawn better than that, really. So, that's kind of amazing to me. Yeah, so we have Submariner, his first ever contact with the surface world. It doesn't go too well. He actually winds up murdering a few people, although it's more or less in self-defense plus confusion. But we got to move right along here. So now we have a Captain America story, and it's the usual Nazi smashing fare, trapped in the Nazi stronghold. Yeah, a lot of jingoism going on here. You got Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. I especially like how Captain America will often refer to the Nazis as Ratsies. That's kind of funny. You even have some cross-dressing in this one. As you see, there's Cap dressed as an old lady, pretending to be the grandmother of Bucky. And Bucky often talks about how he doesn't like wearing a sissy suit. That's how they're getting around undercover. Let's move along here. So yeah, it's a, you know, takeaway. And then we have Stan Lee's first ever story, which is actually a prose story. Captain America foils the Traitor's Revenge. So not much to show you there. It's important simply because it's Stan Lee's first writing job in Marvel, and with one of its biggest ever characters. So on to the 50s now, which of course, if you don't know, there was a real, after they're being introduced in the end of the 30s and through the 40s being fairly popular, there was a huge dip in popularity of superheroes in the 50s, so most comic book companies went other ways, writing about various other genres, sci-fi, but without superheroes, Old West, romance, and that sort of thing. And again, it's too bad, like, Rawhide Kid #1 is one of the honorable mentions. I would have liked to have seen that. Instead, we get a little story, a small story from Journey into Mystery #6, April 1953, which is sort of like those comics from the 50s, those scary comics, creepy and eerie, and all that. And just a short little story. And then Tales to Astonish #13, I Challenge Groot, the monster from Planet X. So you're not going to find any classic Marvel characters in here. This is just a short little story with a bit of a twist ending. Don't know why I'm showing it to you. It's not much to look at. But it's all, grim and macabre. Ugh. And Groot is sort of standard 50s sci-fi monster movie fare. This giant monster made of wood comes and it terrorizes this town. It's about how this local scientist figures out a way to stop him. Short, fairly satisfying, whatever, and then boom, we're already out of the 50s and into the 60s. Now, the 60s, of course, the Silver Age, huge. Okay, I already see I'm probably going to have to break this into 2 parts, but I think it's worth it. I want to take you through this and tell you what's in it and, help you decide whether or not it's worth picking up. Obviously, depends upon how much of a big fan of Marvel you are. So, in the 60s, we just got all sorts of things, of course. The introduction of Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four towards the end of the decade, the X-Men, just goes on and on. Big, huge thing. So it starts actually kind of with kind of disappointing. It's another one of those stories that's almost a carryover from the 50s. It's called Those Who Changed, from Amazing Adult Fantasy number 10. Just another short little sci-fi-ish story with a twist ending. I always enjoyed the title Amazing Adult Fantasy. I don't know. It sounds a little dirty to me. Yeah, so it's short, but still it's taking up space, seems unnecessary, just a little thing about scientists and stuff. So then we finally get a story I really enjoy, Fantastic Four, number 13. Fantastic Four versus the Red Ghost and his indescribable super apes. Pretty much indescribable, yeah. So you have a commie bad guy. This is written by Stan Lee, drawn by Jack Kirby. That's how the run went for a very long time of Fantastic Four. Very colorful, lots of great action and adventure. I'm really glad this story was included. Parts of it seem really goofy, but still, when you look at what's going on with the Fantastic Four, even in recent times, it still fits in. Like, this character has shown up again and again, actually. The main thing that makes this a significant title, it's the first ever appearance of the Watcher. Now, I don't know if at the time when they introduced the Watcher, if they were going to have him be a big recurring force or not, but they really stumbled on something good here. He explains exactly who he is and where he comes from and what the Watchers do, and I really enjoy that. So, really nice story. Next story is another good one, and I don't have a problem with. Stan Lee, this time drawn by Steve Ditko, of course, and it is the origin story of Doctor Strange. There are actually several issues in here, and then they got apparently a bunch of letters demanding to know exactly what his origin was, because it wasn't handled in the first issue. He was established. So this explains that. It's nothing amazing, but it's a good, like, that's what this is about, right? Owning good pieces of comic history within the Marvel universe, the framework. And so that, again, I'm pleased with it. Now, we come to the Spider-Man story from 1967, The Amazing Spider-Man. Spider-Man No More. And, I don't know. I thought there must have been much better things they could have drawn from the 60s. It's good to have a Spider-Man story in here. But all it is, we've even seen it rehashed in Spider-Man 2, just where he gets to a point where he feels like his life as Spider-Man is just, not really worth it. It's just messing up his life as Peter Parker too much, and for a brief little while, he thinks that it would be best if he retired the tights there. But yeah, so Amazing Fantasy number 15, the first ever appearance of Spider-Man, not in here. Fantastic Four Annual number 3, Wedding of Reed and Sue, not in here. I'm just reading from the honorable mentions, things we could have had here. The origin story of Daredevil, that's Daredevil number 53. We got Silver Surfer, just so many things that could have been put in here that weren't. I'm a little disappointed with the Spider-Man story. John Romita, it's one of his earlier works, so that makes it significant. It does have really nice art, it's enjoyable. And we're coming up to the 70s, and I think I'll stop here. But we're coming up to the 70s, and so far, like I said, I got this as a Christmas gift, and I'm really glad to have it. Somebody who loves Marvel, this is a really great thing to have. It really is, but it almost seems like Thomas there had just sort of decided that he would go off the board and say, well, everybody knows this, but I think I'll point out the stories, that aren't as well known. And I enjoy that, but I don't know if that really fits into the whole idea of this anniversary collection, a 70-year retrospective. But we'll keep going with that. Anyway, I'm glad to see you all back here in 2010. We're going to do lots of episodes, have a lot of fun, talk about a lot of comics. So I'll try to be a little more prolific. I'm busy these days, but I mean, it's good. I like doing this sort of stuff and keep myself busy. So I hope you're all doing great, and thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time. Stan the Man always said, enough said.